How can you subtract decimals? Think about this question during the lesson. What is the difference in the wingspans of the two butterflies? Which operation should we choose? We should subtract to find the difference. Find 5 and 92 hundredths minus 4 and 37 hundredths. What is an estimated answer? Round 5 and 92 hundredths to 6. Round 4 and 37 hundredths to 4. Subtract. What does the estimated answer of 2 mean? It means that one butterfly's wingspan is about 2 centimeters greater than the other's wingspan. Now let's find the answer and compare it to our estimate. Write the numbers, lining up the decimal points. Why do you line up the decimal points? You line up the decimal points to line up all place values correctly. Subtract the hundredths. Regroup if needed. Why was it necessary to regroup when subtracting the hundredths? There are only 2 hundredths to subtract from, but you need to subtract 7 hundredths. How is regrouping shown? Since there are not enough hundredths, one of the tenths is regrouped as 10 hundredths and added to the hundredths place, giving 12 hundredths. That leaves only 8 tenths. Subtract the tenths and ones. Bring down the decimal point. The difference in the wingspans is 1 and 55 hundredths centimeters. Is this a reasonable difference? The difference is reasonable since the estimate was 2.
Good morning, good morning. Okay, today we're going to focus on Unit 1, Lesson 11, which is subtracting decimals. Now, we've already started with adding decimals, and we're familiar with the steps that we need to take when adding decimals. Subtracting decimals was almost exactly the same thing, except that now we're going to focus on the operation of subtracting instead of adding. Now, I have a problem right here on the board, and if you see, this problem is 7.4 minus 2.8. Well, the first step we learned in yesterday's lesson was that we have to line up the decimals. Line up your decimals. And don't mind my sloppy handwriting. All right, so what I want to do when I see a number that is written sideways, so left to right, I want to rewrite it so that it's written up to down so that I can subtract it properly. Now, what I want to do first is I want to line up the decimals. So I'm going to write 7.4. And then I like to put the decimal point down in the second number first and then fill in the digits. And that way I can know that my decimals are lined up and all of my numbers are lined up properly as well, my places. So now I see that my tenths place is lined up nicely. And I can also see that my ones place is lined up nicely. Now, when we're subtracting, we always start on the right side and we subtract. The important rule to remember when subtracting is that your top digit has to be bigger than the bottom digit. So this top digit has to be bigger. If the top digit is not bigger, you can't subtract and you need to borrow from the next door neighbor. So when I have 4 minus 8, the number one mistake that you guys make is say 4 minus 8, oh, that's 4. Think about it this way. If I have 4 cookies and 8 friends come over, is everyone going to be able to get a cookie? No, I'm not going to have enough. So your top number has to be bigger, or you have to regroup. So since 4 is not bigger than 8, I'm going to borrow from the next door neighbor. That next door neighbor is a 7. I'm going to cross that 7 off, turn it into a 6, and I like to circle that number so I don't forget that that's the one I'm now using. Now, I'm going to give that 1 ones that I borrowed from the 7, I'm going to turn it into 10 tenths, and I'm going to stick a 1 in front of the 4 so that I have 14 tenths. 4 tenths plus 10 tenths is 14 tenths. And now I'm going to circle it. Now I have enough. I can do 14 minus 8 is 6. I can do 6 minus 2 is 4. And I bring down my decimal. So 7.4 minus 2.8 equals 4.6. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. All right, let's do 6.37 minus 2.5. Now, same thing. I want to rewrite this number by lining up the decimals. So I'm going to do 6.37. Make sure you make that decimal nice and big so you don't forget about it. Now, this is why I like to write my decimals first when I'm rewriting numbers. 2.5, I can't line it up by starting, my 2 over here or my 5 over here. So I want to line my decimals up first and then fill in my numbers. 2.5. Now you may notice and you may think to yourself, hey, wait a minute, there's no number under that 7. How am I going to subtract if there's no number under the 7? Well, think of something that equals nothing or no number. What's a way that we can actually write no number that equals nothing? Correct, a 0. So what I can do is I can fill in this missing digit with a 0. It still represents nothing. I'm not changing the value of my numbers, but it helps me to be able to know what I'm subtracting. Now I can subtract. Let me change my color. 7 minus 0 is 7. 3 minus 5 I can't do. The reason I can't do it is because my 3 is smaller than my 5. So since my 3 is smaller, I'm going to borrow from the 6, turn it into a 5, turn that 3 into a 13, and now I can subtract. 13 minus 5 is 8. 5 minus 2 is 3. And don't forget to bring down your decimal point. 3.87. Excellent. So that's how easy it is to subtract decimals. Just remember that first things first, you need to line them up, just like that video that we watched for adding decimals, and then you can subtract. Always remember that your bigger number must be on the top. Bigger number on top. All right. Awesome job, guys.